Hello my friends, welcome to the next episode of Just Return. But first of all, for David and Pauline Murdoch, I just want to show off my tie. This was a present from them and I really appreciate it, so I just wanted you to see that I do wear it. Thanks very much. Sorry, camera problem again. Right. So, we'd got to the situation where Gus and Belle were at the camp of the local folk, and there in their home they were being dealt with medically for Belinda to get some help with this terrible cut that was annoying her on her head. But Gus had asked her, was that okay? So Belle smiled at the old man and said, I always thought alternative medicine might make sense. The old man indicated to Belle to lie flat. She did. He moved closer, shuffling toward her without rising, and lifting her head, he put it on his leg, turning it so that he could see the cut, the wound on her head. He lifted a large knife, which alarmed Gus, but Belle, though seeing the knife, didn't stir. He heated it in the flames, and then he placed it on the wound. Belle stiffened and gave a little shriek, but Yukta took her hand and held it gently. Now, after waving the knife in the air for a few seconds, the old general practitioner of the Amazon community took the blade and shaved away Belle's hair for 1/4 of an inch each side of the cut. Then he lifted some of the treacly substance in his hands and very gently placed it on the wound, as a loving mother might in Western civilization, with some patent antiseptic. Belle winced a bit because it stung, just a little, but after a couple of minutes he indicated that Belle should sit up. She did, and smilingly said, thank you. Yukta spoke to the old medicine man, his father, and they all smiled at each other. The old man and Gus communicated a little through signs, and in the dust of the floor Gus was able to draw roughly the Amazon flowing to the Atlantic and across the sea, the coast of Europe. He shaped his right hand like an airplane and took it up from Europe, and then suddenly and shakingly, it seemed almost as if he was reliving the crash, he brought it down abruptly in the trees he imagined near the Amazon. How much the old man understood Gus could never know, but his concerned face at least meant he grasped the problem that they'd fallen out of the sky. If he had never before set eyes on a white European, he was doing very well. A little later it seemed that all the village was entering the large home where Gus, Belle and the 2 native men already were. All stood respectfully back from the old man. Belle noticed that some of the men and women now had on brightly coloured decorative clothing. Breasts were covered, and there were feathers with beads, flowers and faces painted in bright reds and oranges and yellows. All stood in silent respect whilst the old medicine man addressed first of all Yukta and then the whole assembly. A wall was rolled back at one end of the homestead so that it was much lighter. 2 men started tapping out a rhythm on drums, small hollowed out wood with animal skins tightly stretched over it. Another man had a strange kind of pipe that seemed to be covered in snakeskin. Soon a lot of noise was being made and all were up on their feet dancing. Across the middle of the room were the men and women wearing the bright clothes, but behind them gathered the rest, including Yukta and his son Rukno. Belle also recognised Taliki among the women, and she was at the front, one of the brightly dressed girls. The dance was very much dictated by the drum beats, and the pipes played music of a kind not like Western style, but somehow seeming that it would be closer to American blues than anything else, a kind of mournful, you don't know how it can be man, making a good living around the Amazon kind of sound. But the only human voices were 2 of the men who danced and moaned. Then suddenly the drums changed tempo and the gentle pace of the dance became a frenzied blaze of movement and colour. And had the pace been a painting, it would certainly have been a wild, abstract canvas that the artist was working on. The turmoil commotion would have had the police out in Salisbury, Belle was thinking, but her and Gus both found their feet moving up and down to the rhythm of the drums. Belle would have liked to join in, but she wasn't sure if she'd be breaking any taboos when she was not a member of the tribe. However, when the dance again returned to the slower pace, but with a different rhythm, the little toddler girl came to fetch her, and Belle, catching Taliki's face, realised that she was being asked to join the community dancing. She stood by Taliki and watched her feet, The rhythm was a steady 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beat, followed by a quicker 7, 8, 9. Then a pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Fast and fast. The pipe was blasting out the deeper notes and sounded to Belle like something an aborigine would have enjoyed. Well, Belle hadn't been to a dance for a while, and she pounded her feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Quickly back, as Taliki had demonstrated. The other women and some of the men were clearly pleased to see the white lady getting on down to the Amazon beat. Without warning, the whole thing became frenzied again, and Belle, determined to try, struggled with the pounding rhythm, high kicks and waving arms of the locals. It was disco night gone wild. Rolling Stones, Madness and The Clash all mixed up, though there were no flashing lights, no disco lights. The bright colours all around Belinda made her very light-headed, yet still she danced, determined to last out and yip it up for once. Gus, for his part, looked on bemused by it all. He envied Belle's desire and courage to go native, and recognised that though in some areas of life he had courage for most anything, he was not so good at casting all restraint off at a party. The rhythm changed between fast and slow, half a dozen more times before the dancing stopped, and Belle, sweating and weary but overjoyed, was led back by Taliki to Gus, and soon the little one, named Alikla, was cuddled up to her. Almost at once, as the dancing stopped, in came the food, and what food! A greater variety of unusual dishes than either Gus or Belle had seen for months. Mostly they did not know what they were eating, though Gus did notice one fish, which he had thrown back, unsure if it was edible. The natives ate this fish with some kind of spice, and ate it cold, seemingly raw, and actually it was very tasty. There's also a lot of fruit and nuts and meat. Neither did he want to know what they were eating. It might put them off, and especially Belle. Gus is not easily put off. After the food is over, the men sit with the women behind them. A bowl of powder is brought out. Neapo, Taliki whispers in Belle's ear, and Belle and Gus watch for what takes place. What does take place is very alarming to both of them. The men only take tubes, maybe hollow reeds, and sniff the powder up their noses. Within a few moments, the men are in a drugged state. The bowl is brought to Yokta and his father, who in turn sniff at the substance, and soon they too are in a state of hallucinations. The elderly medicine man offers it to Gus, but he declines respectfully. The medicine man appears to be disappointed, but has the glazed look of a man seeing a video in mid-air that nobody else can see. Yokta, on the other hand, becomes highly energised and goes in front of a row of men and screams and shouts at them as if they were his deadliest enemies. One or two of them yell back in open defiance, one of them making noises in imitation of the howler monkeys that are common in this region. Yokta's son and the rest of their men seem to be oblivious to all the aggression, and like the doctor, they seem to be in a trance-like state. Some of them muttering to themselves, and one reaching out to touch whatever it is there that he sees, but it is not really there. One of the drummers starts to beat his drum, but in a very slow rhythm now, with 2-second pauses between the first two beats, and then a third, maybe 4 seconds later, repeating and repeating this. He had the perfect rhythm of a ticking pendulum clock, with an unusual tick, but perfect timing. He also moaned slowly, some kind of dirge. Gus is relieved that the bowl is not offered to Belle, because he's afraid that she's in a reckless mood and might just try it. However, there are two reasons this cannot happen. First, Nepo is never offered to the women except by the healer, along with other medicinal procedures in some medical situation. Second, Gus didn't know it because it had never been discussed, but Belle had a particular hatred of drugs. One of her very young classmates in West Belfast had died when engaging in solvent abuse, and Belle had been shocked into intolerance of all substance abuse. Though ecstasy tablets had been freely available in Salisbury, and many of Belle's friends had experimented with it, she had always refused. At university, cannabis had been in plentiful supply, but the memory of Mary Taggart dying so young had shocked Belle and put her off drugs for good. That's not to say she never drank too much, but in her mind alcohol was something different. Having a drink was like swimming in the deep end of the bathing pool. You had some kind of control and could get out when you wanted to. Drugs, on the other hand, were like swimming in the Atlantic. If you're not careful, it sweeps you away and you're gone. She could now add that taking drugs is like flying over the Brazilian jungle with an engine on fire and just waiting to crash. Belle and Gus watched with macabre fascination as the gentle people of the village were taken over by the power of Nepo. She couldn't help calling to mind what a lecturer in Southampton had said. In the Bible there are references to spiritism, witchcraft, sorcery, and the Greek word pharmakia is the word that pharmacist comes from. It means literally druggist. The lecturer, an anthropologist, had used it to explain away much of the muddled strange happenings among people around the earth as they got involved in the strange religious practices as being merely the use of potent chemicals or plants. So, life got lively in the village, and Gus and Belle are caught up in the midst of that. Just like to mention that that's based on research of what happens among some of the people in the tribal villages of the Amazon, and they do have one larger building that many of the people live in, and where the chief usually lives and others live around about. Very interesting people, but like all people, they've got their good points and their problems as well. Thanks for listening, my friends, and there'll be another episode to follow very shortly. Bye for now. Bye.